Picture this. Someone tells you that you did a great job, that you look nice, that they appreciate something you did, and immediately, without thinking, you deflect. Oh, it was nothing. This old thing? I just threw it on. Anyone could have done it. Or worse, you laugh it off, change the subject, minimize it so quickly that the person giving the compliment feels awkward for even trying. You know someone like this. Someone who can't seem to let a kind word land. Someone who bats away praise like it's an insult. Someone who would rather shrink than be seen. Maybe you are that person, and here's the question no one asks. Why? Why is it so hard to simply say, thank you, and let it be? Why does a compliment, something meant to make you feel good, create such discomfort instead? It's easy to assume that people who can't accept compliments are just humble, modest, self-aware enough not to let praise go to their heads. But that's not the full picture, because beneath the deflection, beneath the uncomfortable laugh and the quick dismissal, there's often something deeper. A belief, a wound, a story about worthiness that was written long before the compliment was ever given. See, people who struggle with compliments aren't rejecting kindness. They're rejecting the idea that they deserve it. And that's a very different thing, because at some point, somewhere in their past, they learned that praise is dangerous, that being seen is risky, that standing out, even in a positive way, comes with consequences they're not willing to face. Psychologists have studied this extensively. They've found that people who deflect compliments often struggle with something called imposter syndrome, the belief that any success, any achievement, any positive quality they have is either a fluke or a fraud, that if people really knew them, they wouldn't be impressed at all. But here's what's misunderstood. The inability to accept compliments isn't one thing. It's not a single insecurity with a single cause. Some people deflect because they genuinely don't believe the compliment is true. Others deflect because they're afraid of what happens if they accept it. And some deflect because accepting praise feels like setting themselves up for disappointment later. Let me break it down. The criticized child. Some people learned to deflect compliments before they were old enough to understand what they were deflecting. These are the children who grew up in environments where praise was rare and criticism was constant, where mistakes were highlighted and successes were minimized or ignored. Maybe their accomplishments were met with, "That's good, but you could have done better." Maybe their appearance was picked apart more than it was celebrated. Maybe love felt conditional, given only when they performed well, withheld when they fell short. So the child learned something devastating, that praise is temporary, that attention to their good qualities only sets them up for scrutiny of their flaws. That being seen is dangerous because what's seen can be judged, and judgment, in their experience, is rarely kind. That child is now an adult, and when someone compliments them, their first instinct isn't gratitude, it's suspicion, because deep down, they don't trust it. They're waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the compliment to be followed by a correction, a qualification, a but. So they deflect it first. They minimize it before anyone else can. They reject the praise because that feels safer than accepting it and being disappointed when it's taken away. For them, deflecting compliments isn't modesty. It's self-protection. It's the armor they wear against a world that taught them that being seen means being criticized. The imposter. Then there's another group, the people who genuinely don't believe the compliment is true. These are the ones living with imposter syndrome, the high achievers who are convinced they're frauds, the talented people who believe their success is luck, not skill. When someone praises their work, they think, if you really knew me, you wouldn't say that. When someone admires a quality they have, they think they're just being nice. They don't mean it. They deflect compliments because accepting them feels dishonest, like they're tricking people into thinking they're better than they are, like they're letting someone believe a lie. This is the mind that can accomplish incredible things and still feel like a fake, that can receive award after award and still think, I don't deserve this, that can be objectively skilled and still believe that everyone else is just too polite to point out how inadequate they really are. Psychologists have found that imposter syndrome often develops in people who were praised for their intelligence or talent as children rather than their effort. They learned that their worth was tied to being naturally good at things. So when something became difficult, when they had to struggle, they internalized that as proof they weren't as capable as everyone thought. And now, as adults, they can't accept compliments because accepting them would mean accepting a version of themselves they don't believe in. It's easier to deflect than to confront the gap between who they are and who they think they should be. The spotlight avoider. And then there's the person who deflects compliments because they don't want to be seen, not because they don't believe the compliment, but because being noticed feels uncomfortable, vulnerable, exposed. These are often the people who grew up believing that staying small was safer. Maybe they were taught that pride is a sin, that standing out invites envy, judgment, or attack, that the safest place to be is in the background, unnoticed and unremarkable. Or maybe they learned through experience. Maybe they stood out once for their looks, their intelligence, their success, and it made them a target. Maybe other people resented them for it. Maybe they were bullied, excluded, or treated differently because they were seen as better than. So they learned to dim their light, to deflect praise, to make themselves smaller so others would feel more comfortable. And now, even when a compliment is genuine and kind, it feels like a spotlight they don't want shining on them. For them, deflecting compliments is about control. It's their way of managing how much attention they receive, because because attention, in their experience, is dangerous. It makes you visible, and visible means vulnerable. The relationship protector. There's one more type, the person who deflects compliments because they're afraid of how it will affect their relationships. These are the people who worry that accepting praise will make others feel bad, that standing in their own light will cast shadows on people they care about. They deflect because they don't want to seem arrogant. They don't want to make someone else feel less than. They don't want to be the person who thinks they're all that. So when someone compliments them, they immediately redirect it. Oh, it wasn't just me. Everyone helped. You're just as good. It's really not a big deal. They're so focused on not making others uncomfortable that they deny themselves the simple joy of being appreciated. They sacrifice their own recognition to protect other people's feelings, even when those people aren't asking them to. For them, deflecting compliments is an act of care, but it's also an act of self-erasure, because in their effort to make everyone else comfortable, they've forgotten that they're allowed to take up space too. All of these people, the criticized child, the imposter, the spotlight avoider, the relationship protector, they all share something in common. They've all learned in different ways that accepting compliments is risky, that praise creates expectations, that being seen as good means you can be seen as not good enough. And maybe at the time they learned that lesson, they were right. Maybe their environment didn't make space for them to shine. Maybe their confidence was weaponized against them. Maybe staying small kept them safe. But here's where it gets complicated, because what once protected them has now become a prison. The habit of deflecting praise has become so automatic that they can't accept kindness even when it's safe to do so, even when it's genuine, even when they deserve it. Deep down, people who can't accept compliments often crave them the most, not because they're seeking validation, but because they're starving for it, because they've spent so long not believing in themselves that a kind word from someone else feels like water in a desert. But when that water is offered, they can't drink it. They push it away. They deflect it. They deny it. Because accepting it would mean confronting something they've been avoiding, the possibility that they are worthy, that they are enough, that they deserve to be seen and appreciated. And that's terrifying, because if they let themselves believe it, and then something happens to prove it wrong, if they fail, if they're criticized, if they're rejected, the fall will hurt more than if they never believed it in the first place. So they stay in the safety of self-doubt. They deflect the compliment. They keep themselves small, because small is predictable. Small is safe. Small means they can't be knocked down because they were never standing up in the first place. There's something quietly heartbreaking about watching someone deflect a compliment, about seeing someone worthy of praise refuse to accept it, about knowing they don't believe in themselves the way everyone else does. Because here's the truth. When you deflect a compliment, you're not just rejecting praise. You're teaching people not to give it to you. You're showing them that their words don't land, that their kindness isn't welcome, that appreciating you makes you uncomfortable, so maybe they should stop trying. And over time, they do. They stop complimenting you, not because they don't think you're worthy, but because you've made it clear that you don't want to hear it. And then you end up exactly where you feared you'd be, unseen, unappreciated, alone in your belief that you're not enough. Except now, you don't even have the compliments to reject. You've successfully convinced the world to treat you the way you've been treating yourself. That's the tragedy of deflecting compliments. You push away the very thing you need most because you're too afraid to believe you deserve it. So what would it look like to accept a compliment, to let it land instead of batting it away? It would start with recognizing that compliments aren't about you proving your worth. They're about someone else expressing appreciation. When you deflect it, you're not just rejecting their words, you're rejecting their experience. You're telling them they're wrong to feel what they feel, that their perception of you isn't valid. And that's not modesty, that's control. You're trying to control how people see you because you're afraid of being seen as more than you believe you are. But here's the thing. You don't get to decide what someone else appreciates about you. You don't get to tell them they're wrong for noticing something good. You don't get to minimize your own value just because accepting it feels uncomfortable. Accepting a compliment doesn't mean you're arrogant. It doesn't mean you think you're perfect. It doesn't mean you're setting yourself up for disappointment. It just means you're letting someone be kind to you. And you're choosing to believe, even for a moment, that maybe, just maybe, they're right. Here's what that might look like in practice. Someone says, "You did a great job on that project." Instead of deflecting with, "Oh, it was nothing," you pause, you take a breath, and you say, "Thank you. I really appreciate that." That's it. 2 sentences. No qualifications. No minimizing. No redirecting. Just acceptance. It will feel strange at first. It might even feel dishonest, like you're lying by not correcting them. But you're not lying. You're just letting them give you what they want to give. Recognition, appreciation, kindness. And the more you practice it, the easier it gets. The more you let compliments land, the more you start to believe them. Not because you're becoming arrogant, but because you're learning that maybe the story you've been telling yourself, that you're not worthy, not enough, not deserving, maybe that story isn't true. Maybe it never was. The world needs people who can accept compliments, not because we need more ego, but because we need more people who believe they're allowed to be appreciated, who believe their contributions matter, who believe that being seen doesn't have to be dangerous. Because when you deflect a compliment, you're not just hurting yourself, you're modeling for everyone around you that self-deprecation is safer than self-acceptance, that doubting yourself is more virtuous than believing in yourself, that shrinking is better than standing tall. And that's not the message the world needs, especially not from you. So if you're someone who can't accept compliments, know this: you're not being humble, you're being afraid. And there's a difference. Humility is knowing your worth without needing to prove it. Fear is denying your worth because you're scared of what happens if you acknowledge it. And you've been scared for long enough. You deserve to be appreciated. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to let someone tell you that you matter and actually believe them. So the next time someone gives you a compliment, try something different. Don't deflect. Don't minimize. Don't laugh it off or change the subject. Just say, thank you. Let it land. Let it sit. Let yourself feel what it's like to be appreciated without immediately pushing it away. Because you're worthy of that. You always have been. You've just been too afraid to believe it. But maybe it's time to start.